This happened in the late fall when I was in my junior year of high school. I skipped school this day as I told my mom I wasn't feeling well. I most definitely exaggerated when I told her I was sick. I wasn't physically sick, I just really wasn't feeling the best that day in general, and I really wanted to skip school. Fast forward to the middle of the day, probably around noon, I heard this creepy, high-pitched laughter that sounded like it was coming from outside. At first, I just assumed it was our neighbor, but as the laughing continued, I couldn't help but feel creeped out. I worked myself up and I started to get this weird feeling inside, almost like something bad was about to happen. I made my way over to my window and peeked outside through the blinds, and right away I saw an older lady standing right before me, literally within 3 inches away. I basically screamed in fear. "What do you want?" I asked. She had this disturbing, perplexed look on her face and this distinct smile that I will never forget. The only thing separating us was the glass window. I then moved my head away from the window and closed my blinds. This all happened in a matter of 10 seconds or less. I walked out of the room and attempted to gather my thoughts. I called my mom and she said I'd better wait on calling the police and to call them if the lady gives me any more problems. I went back to my room and I looked out the window again and she was gone. I felt an immense amount of relief after that. I knew I wasn't 100 in the clear though. I looked through all the windows in the house just to make sure she wasn't on our property anywhere else. And to my luck, thankfully, she didn't appear to be anywhere. The rest of the day went on just fine and nothing more of the old lady came about. But a few days later on Saturday night, it was around 11 o'clock I assume, I frighteningly jumped out of my seat when I heard someone knocking on my window. Right away, my first thought was that the old lady was back. I yelled out to her and told her to go away. I didn't even look out the window this time. She then started laughing again. I then yelled at her loud enough to wake my parents, apparently, because my dad rushed over to my room and asked me what was going on. By now, the laughing and knocking had completely stopped, and I was too scared to explain. So I just pointed at the window and put my finger up to my lips, implying that we needed to be quiet. My dad confusingly walked over to my window and opened the blinds. He was met with the same woman that I saw a few days earlier. She began screaming at us, and she reached behind herself to grab a knife and started flashing it all around at us. This woman was screaming at the top of her lungs, but we had no idea what the hell she was saying. She then opened the window and tried to climb through the window, but because of her old age, she couldn't get herself up in time before my dad pushed her back and shut and locked the window. He called the police, and surprisingly enough, the old woman was still on our property when they arrived. It's my understanding that she rolled her ankle pretty bad and wasn't able to walk much by herself. I think she just gave up and accepted defeat, and though she was going to be arrested, she told the police that she was going to kill us, and she unraveled her entire plan to the officer in an interrogation at the station. The most disturbing thing to me about this story is that this woman has to be around 70 years old. Crime doesn't have an age limit, I guess, and neither does the horrible things that human beings can do. It's quite clear that she was clinically insane, and my presumption without a doubt was correct that she was elderly and losing her mind. Apparently, she had been living next door in a house that was foreclosed that we thought was completely unoccupied. We had only been living in our home for 2 months tops when all this happened, and there's no telling how long she had been really living in that house. She told police she was there for a few weeks, but we never got much more information than that. It's disturbing to think how long she had been planning this for, and how things could have gone a lot differently if it weren't for my dad. I make sure to check that my window was locked now, more than I'd like to admit. I finally bought my first house when I was 28 years old. It was in a rough part of town and considerably not the safest neighborhood to live in. You definitely get what you pay for, and I learned my lesson with that. Within my first month of living there, nothing out of the ordinary happened at all, and I was definitely getting settled in, and I thought that I could get used to it, like living there. But all that changed quickly. I met the neighbors, and I would have quick, lighthearted small talk with them here and there, but nothing more. Everyone surprisingly seemed quite normal, despite the neighborhood that we were in. Of course, there was just one guy that was an oddball out of the few. He lived a couple houses down, in a pretty small and beat-up-looking house, even more beat up than the others, including mine. He was probably around 45 years old, I'd say, and he always gave me the heebie-jeebies from the exact second I first laid eyes on him. He was average height, a bit overweight, and barely had any hair, and almost always wore the same rather dirty-looking clothes. He tried speaking with me a number of times, and even though I wasn't very interested in talking to him, I let him rant to me a handful amount of separate times, and he would chat my ears off about the most random and quite unusual things. There was something very off-putting about him. For example, one time I got home from the grocery store, and he was walking on the sidewalk towards his house, and he stopped and turned around when I pulled into the driveway, and he began talking to me. He started talking about his dead mother and how he hated her and how she was a horrible woman. He seemed very angry and was almost yelling while he was telling me this. Another time, I was sitting on my porch with one of my buds, and he saw us sitting outside and practically invited himself over, and he cut me off while I was talking, and he began yelping about something that happened to him at work. He was a dishwasher at some restaurant, and he was telling us both about how he hates it there and wants to quit. He then started making racist comments about some of the workers there. It was at this point I didn't care about being nice anymore, and I walked inside and signaled to my friend Brenton to come inside with me. I shut and locked the door behind us, and I peeked out my living room window, and thankfully he was walking away. Brendan and I were so bewildered about what had just happened that we started laughing uncontrollably because it was just so weird. Fast forward to later that night. Brendan had too many drinks, so we thought it would be best for him to crash in my place for the night. I had him sleep on the couch because the guest bedroom didn't have a bed in the room yet. At some point in the night, as I was lying in bed, probably about to drift off to sleep soon, I heard a knock on the front door. I looked through the peephole and I saw that it was the same creepy guy that never seemed to leave me alone. My instinct was to ignore it, but my buddy Brendan said, "Maybe you should just open it, bro, to see what he wants." I kind of sighed, but the man seemed to be afflicted, so I thought the right thing to do would be to open the door and see what he wanted. Well, what he was asking for completely threw me off guard and quite honestly angered me immensely. He asked me for $50. I looked at him like he was crazy, and I told him no, that I didn't have $50 flying around to just give out. He said okay and apologized for asking, and I thought that was going to be the end of it, so I attempted to shut the door, and he reached out and put his arm between the door and leaned up against it. "Wait, if you don't have any money, can you at least help me out with something? Like food? It could be anything. Just some sort of snack or something that will get me by for the rest of the night, please?" I thought about helping him, but I was over this guy's games, and I didn't have much food to offer anyways, and with it being 11 o'clock at night, I was already pretty bothered by the whole situation in general. So I looked him dead in the eyes, and I firmly told him no and that he needed to leave. I figured I wasn't obligated to feed this man, nor was I obligated to even speak with him if I didn't want to. I went to shut the door again, and that's when he bursted through and tackled me. Brendan got up immediately and pulled him off of me, and the man ended up running away. He probably realized he was outnumbered and didn't stand a chance in a fight with us. When he left, I saw that he had a gun tucked in his pants on his backside, and I couldn't believe it. Was this man going to try and rob me or kill me or something? At this point, something told me that he was wanted by the police because I told the neighbor about what happened a few days later, and she was shocked. And then she shocked me even more, because when I told her about the guy and what happened, she said that nobody lived in that house and that it had been abandoned ever since before she lived there, which was over 5 years at the time. I called the police and they found nothing in the home or around it outside that would give the slightest clue as to what was going on. I think that he was most definitely squatting there for a place to live. Well, I still to this day haven't heard anything regarding the situation that happened to me, and I can't say for sure what would have happened had I been alone that night. I don't live in that house anymore, and I've been moved out for 3 years now.